Wake-up call to the American church. The Nazis took power in Germany and went on to kill 6 million Jews. Could something like that eventually happen right here in the United States? Well, our next guest is urging fellow Christians to repent of their silence in the face of evil before it's too late. Eric Metaxas is a journalist, author, and host of the Eric Metaxas radio show. His new book is Letter to the American Church. He joins us now to set us straight. Eric, always good to talk with you, and I've read your book. It's wonderful, by the way. I recommend it. It seems, though, more like a thesis, perhaps a bit like Martin Luther's 95 Theses or writings by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And you spend a significant amount of time discussing Bonhoeffer, detailing what happened in Germany during the 1930s. So explain the similarity, the parallels that you see happening today right here in the United States.
Well, I'll simply say this. It is the silence of the American church on a host of issues today that many people say, oh, that's not a gospel-related issue. I don't want to be divisive. I want to be political. It is that silence which directly parallels the silence of German Christians in the early 30s. And it led to the satanic evil of the Nazi takeover of that culture where they crushed the church, they silenced the church. But it's because the church allowed them to do it by being silent. And there were many voices at that time giving theological reasons why we should not speak out on these issues. We're not supposed to be political, they said. It's nonsense. It is not biblical. And at a time like this, it's the voice of the devil. But the point is, Christian leaders who are being used by these evil forces, they have no idea what lies ahead. So it's easy for us to look back at the Germans and say, wow, they got it wrong. They should have spoken up. Bonhoeffer was right. I'm with them. But we're doing the same thing in the American church today. And there are voices, leaders in the church today that are being silent. In fact, most leaders in the American church are being silent because some leaders in the American church are actually advocating silence in the face of evil. They know not what they do. I want to give them grace. And I wrote the book to try to reach those people and to say to them, please understand that by not speaking up against everything that you see, by being afraid to be political, you have been silenced. The enemy is using theology to confuse us and to say, well, we're not supposed to talk about that kind of stuff. Romans 13. The same thing happened in Germany. The church was silent. Bonhoeffer and others knew this was not biblical. This was not what God was calling them to do. But the church hesitated enough and kept silent enough for long enough for the Nazis to utterly take over and really do things so evil that we look back, we think, well, that can never happen again. And what I'm saying in this book is that we already see it happening, tremendous devastation in this nation on innumerable issues, and the church is silent.
And you write that Bonhoeffer addressed the question of leadership. He talked about servant leadership, Jesus taking on the role of the lowly slave when he washed the feet of his disciples. And you say Bonhoeffer was suggesting that a leader is not leading as God would lead when he or she idolizes self. They become misleaders. Do you see that happening today in America? How is that being played out in the church and in politics?
20 years ago, if somebody said, well, don't be political because we have different kinds of people in our congregation, you know, but you'd say today, the world has changed. Today, the left in America is advocating for cultural Marxism, which is atheism. It's atheistic. So when people are talking about a critical race theory, when they're talking about the transgender madness, all of these things are new. And if the church was silent 20 years ago, well, that was one thing. But to say today that, well, I don't want to be political, how can you not be political? William Wilberforce, about whom I've written and I mentioned in the book along with Bonhoeffer, he was dealing with the slavery issue and the slave trade. He knew it was satanic, and he was political in saying we've got to do what we can because we're Christians. And when people say, but you're being political, he would say, no, I'm simply doing what God commands me to do, to be a voice for the voiceless. The African slaves don't have a voice. If I don't speak, God will judge me. If I don't speak for the unborn today, God will judge me.
Eric, what specifically then do Christians need to do? Do we need to attend school board meetings, run for office? I mean, beyond just speaking up, what should we do?
Well, we need to do everything. In other words, I think that if when we talk about the church, we're talking about multiplied millions of Americans who each has a different calling. So we just have to ask God, Lord, what would you have me to do? But do something. We had pulpits on fire before the revolution, advocating against tyranny. They weren't afraid to be political. Before the Civil War in this country, we had pulpits preaching against the evils of slavery, and people said to them, you're being political, shut up, shut up. We must not shut up. We must speak. Time is very, very short.
Okay, speaking up for truth, faith in action, living out our faith. The book is Letter to the American Church. Eric Metaxas, thank you for setting us straight today. We appreciate it, Eric. Good book.
God bless you. Thank you.